now. So
Good stuff. All right. Good morning, evening, afternoon, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We're continuing the challenge with another amazing creative talent who was suggested by a fellow friend and reader of her comic. She is known for a comic that is new to me, but hopefully not new to everyone else. It is called Pride of Life. We're joined today by Rhandi Fisher. How are you doing today, Rhandi?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing wonderful. You know, I always love getting new comics in my email because it shows that there are so many genres, so many different talented creative people that I have yet to meet, and I want to meet them all in my short lifespan that I'm sure I'm going to have. But for those that have never been to, and I believe it's prideoflife.com, if I recall.
Yes. Prideoflife.com, yes.
Perfect. For those that have never actually been to your comic, what is it all about?
Oh, it's actually a low fantasy action comedy about a boy who obtains a magical fruit, and by consuming it, he becomes a super beast, which is a super powerful, long-lived entity. But the flip side of that is if you eat this fruit, you're cursed to have a violent death.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the story is basically about all his misadventures after having eaten this fruit.
I think the one thing that really struck me while I was reading it was not only the art style, which I love, by the way, is the action. You have a lot of action going on there, and it's not just your traditional speed line type stuff that you see in most comics. You're actually doing some amazing perspectives with it. You're doing some really great shading and coloring with everything as well too. And what is it about your comic that you're being so dynamic with?
Well, starting out, I actually began the comic in 2004, so it's a 10-year comic, so it's actually many different changes throughout this 10-year period. Starting out, if you're familiar with the shonen comics or any kind of anime directed at boys, It started out as a shonen comic because I was just coming off a huge anime kick in high school, so so there's a lot of that in the first two issues. And while I did like it, I realized that I wasn't having fun with it because I felt like it had to be this particular thing. Then I realized, I could really just do what I want, and that's when the comedy actually started coming into the series. But I've been drawing comics since maybe about 94, 95, so I would be 12 years old at this point. And at that time, I would have been reading a lot of Ninja Turtles comics.
Yep.
So I think I just have I enjoy action comics. I enjoy things aimed at boys, clearly. But I think at the same time, even though Pride of Life does have action elements, it's really more. It's just a very character-driven story, and you're not just seeing Kedamono's story. He's the main character, the kid who eats the fruit. It's also about how all the characters' actions may end up working for them or against them at some point in the story. There's no event that doesn't come into play at some point, even if it's just the slightest thing. You will likely hear about it later on in the story.
Well, that's interesting. It's good foreshadowing as well too. You obviously have tailored at least your world with Pride of Life to be very inclusive of all the characters you happen to have as well.
I try.
Well, let's talk about world building for a bit, because when it comes to a comic, usually you get your traditional superhero type stuff where it's set in a city, blah blah blah. You know how those go. What is it about your world and the wilderness you've created that has added to your character development?
Well, I usually start out with world building usually springs from whatever characters I create. So it starts out with this kid who's sort of like kind of in a tribal getup. It's like, thinking about okay, where's he located? Okay, well, let's do a forest. I can do plenty of forest. I live basically at the edge of a forest. Let's just work from what we know and branch out from there. So even though the entire world is not, just this wilderness, but this is where we're starting out, and then as the character's journey, you'll see, different communities of actual civilizations up to large cities and different areas within the world itself. This is just a very small part, since it is still in the world building stages at this point. But we're actually coming out of the forest in the current book, so readers will begin to see, how other peoples within the universe live.
Nice, good stuff. I love your humor. You have some great sense of humor that just hits my funny bone every time. How's your comedy evolved over the past 10 years then?
Oh gosh, it's definitely come away from the anime tropes. Definitely no more, characters falling over when somebody says something stupid. That was a big thing of mine in the past, but no gratuitous Japanese. I'm a pretty moderate fan of the Looney Tunes, though. As you can see, there's a fair bit of physical comedy and sight gags within the comic. So I think it mainly stems from that, like Looney Tunes, cartoons in general, for the most part. So that's what I find humorous. That and puns, admittedly. So there are definitely a few that will make people groan. So sorry, everyone. Not sorry.
It's my comic and I can do what I want.
I sure can.
Let's talk about your creative process, because that's always interesting for me, especially those that are creating as well too. Everyone has their own way of going about their style. For you, how did you start your creative process? I know you mentioned anime as your influence, but in terms of character development and drawing, how has that changed over your career with this?
I think a lot of it is, or has been in part, due to the fact that when I was a teenager, I actually used to write a lot of fan fiction. So I was particularly Dragon Ball Z fan fiction, and if anyone who was familiar with Dragon Ball Z knows that apart from the main Saiyan characters, there's no real backstory for anyone else. I was also involved with people who also enjoyed fan fiction, so it was just fun to fill in those gaps. And I think a lot of my writing ability came in from that, and I was able to branch out to my own works in part from there. But I had really been creating characters since, about since I was 11 or 12, and it was really just creating these cool characters, but they were also very 90s characters, so there were a lot of mutants, always mutants. So it was a lot of that. And as far as drawing ability, I'm actually formally trained. I attended a magnet middle school and high school, which is a school of the arts, and I trained in visual arts in there. And then I moved on to two art colleges. I attended the Delaware College of Art and Design for the first 2 years and have my associates from there, and then finished up at Ringling College of Art and Design. So I do have formal training as far as that goes, and that helped a lot. But after college, I actually ended up working in social media for a while, and I think I found the largest growth there just because I had to work in a variety of styles for each of the games that were produced. So I think the most growth as far as drawing ability and character development, because I was designing characters and creatures during my time at the company, from that especially.
Let's talk about the colleges then, because I'm going back to university for visual arts, communication, media, and film. So being a computer person going into a visual arts field is rather an interesting change overall. How were your art colleges? I guess art colleges in general, were they actually what word I'm looking for? Did they actually enjoy the fact that their students were creating comic characters or creating artistic characters along that line? Was that their main focus, was illustration and graphic design?
Well, my major was illustration, so it was never an issue, really. I mean, of course, the first 2 years are your foundation years, so you don't get to really do anything fun. But there were assignments where we could do comic characters and all that, and that's something I always enjoyed. And so Delaware College of Art and Design, I'm not really even counting that because foundation years, who cares? But after I transferred to Ringling, their program is, or at least my instructor was interesting in that he asked us what we wanted to focus on, and then if we were to get assignments, we would, tailor our styles to whatever assignment. So and then I think senior year comes along, we basically just got to do what we want for a thesis. It's really what it is. You just, you write up your thesis statement and you do the work you say you're going to do, and and that's your concentration. So it's never been an issue for either of those. I think the biggest issue was, keep in mind this is like in 2003, people are finally figuring out the internet. So you have all these old school people who don't really use digital media at this point, and I feel like much of the info that was given might have been outdated, or just outdated. Like I think while I was at Ringling, we actually had a portfolio class, and they had us making letterhead and business cards, which is fine, but there wasn't really focus on digital portfolios or how to network, especially how to network. So it's just a very outdated approach for what was actually going on in the world or what needed to be done to get jobs and get your foot in the door.
And I honestly still think that that's almost the case now. While the internet is here, it comes down to you still have to put yourself out there, you still have to network, you still have to give those business cards,
right,
and all that other stuff.
Yes.
The irony. Let's talk about when it comes to. Actually, let's go along this line. Obviously, you're a very creative person. When it comes to either Pride of Life or maybe creating characters for Pride of Life, was there a particular maybe creative mistake with a character that ended up in the comic itself?
Well, there are two I can think of. One is one of the main antagonists, Dolfo, and I think I originally based him on a food dog, but I lost my original concept sketch, and he actually had a really nice kind of tail, almost like a horse, but I couldn't remember how to draw it because I lost that original concept. So it ended up, when I drew it again, coming out as sort of almost a squirrel tail. And then I have a friend who squirrels are her favorite animal, so she was pretty excited over the squirrel tail. So I thought, okay, well, he can be that for you. He'll be a demon squirrel for you. I'll do that for you. And it's kind of been a running gag for that. And I actually ended up updating his design recently because I was never happy with the original. So to incorporate more, rodent-like features. Then the second one, or there's actually two characters who I thought were going to be, just one-off joke characters. And I'm not sure how far you read into, but there was Katamota actually comes into conflict with these two, and they were actually just based on, if you're familiar with One Piece, Sanji and Kuro.
Yeah.
But they ended up being actually pretty popular characters, so I ended up keeping them around. Oops. So they're basically just Sanji and Kuro Griffins, essentially.
I wondered why they looked familiar. That's awesome. That's great to see. It's a lot of people when that happens, they're kind of stuck with the characters they create. I'm glad that you're as versatile with your characters and your creations as you are. So that's great to see.
Well, I try to be.
What about when you're working on these characters, this world, your story overall? How do you know when, or rather, I should say, how do you know when a chapter is done, or when you're actually finished with maybe a character design?
Well, as far as chapters, everything is scripted out in advance. I used to just fly by the seat of my pants. So that. While some good things happen because of that, it caused more problems than it solved. Like the Griffins weren't even going to be a thing in the comic, but I kind of wrote myself into a corner, and I just thought, you know what, let's just throw these guys in and see what happens. And it ended up being a pretty neat story arc. But I don't do that anymore. That's I don't think that's the best thing to do. But I usually try to shoot around 30 pages per comic. If there's going to be a fight scene involved, it might be 50 to 60 pages.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, it's neat, but it's kind of a pain too. But if I can, resolve things within this amount of pages, then great. If I have to go over, oh well, I guess I'm going over. But generally, I'll try to shoot for an even amount of pages. As far as character design, though, really it's just when I'm satisfied with it. I don't feel like there's anything that needs to be changed. And I usually know what I want to go with when I have a character personality in mind or what role that they'll play within the world. And this goes beyond Pride of Life. This goes really with any kind of project I'm doing. Mm. So I think I was actually just for funsies working on a little 2D platformer game concept. But it was if you've heard of the Adventures of Dino Ricky, which was a shooting hell game with cavemen. This is like 1989, 1990. It's like way back in the day.
You figure I would know that because I was around that time. So.
But basically, it's just a vertical scrolling platformer where you play as a caveman and you throw weapons at the oncoming hordes of dinosaurs and other beasts. And it's kind of based on that, except it's a 2D platformer. Mm-hmm. And you play as this little cave kid who kind of hulks. He hulks out if you get meteorite fragments, and that's basically just like the invincibility star in Mario. It's just a meteorite fragment. And I designed a few characters for these. I had a few enemy characters, I had a few boss characters, and then the little cave boy himself. Mm-hmm. And I know I was struggling with one character, or one of the bosses in particular, because I wanted kind of a big T-Rex kind of character, and I knew what I wanted it to be, but it didn't feel like a boss. And this was actually going to be the final boss that I was designing, but it didn't feel like a final boss. It just felt like a big guy to beat. So he ended up getting knocked back in favor of another one that I designed. But it's really just playing around until I'm satisfied, which I think is really the par for the course for anyone in character design.
What about Pride of Life? Have you been to conventions with it? Have you printed any books yet? How has been the business side of things when it comes to marketing yourself and social media and all that?
Well, I've only actually begun to do that this year. Pride of Life up to this point has just been, just something for me to do when I come home from work, basically. Because I did art full time when I was working in social media as well, and that ended last summer, 2013, at which point I started doing freelance. But I figured, it's like, hey, I actually kind of enjoy doing this. Why don't I make it work for me? Mm-hmm. And but it's like I said, it was created in 2004. It's been going for a 10-year period. But I've had to go on hiatus a couple of times. The first time was actually for about 2 years, and this is when I actually got my full-time job and had to, relocate for that. So I'm coming from Delaware to North Carolina to relocate for this job, and this is like a fairly, high-volume job. So I'm really not thinking about sitting in front of a computer to draw when I just spent 10 hours or more sitting in front of a computer drawing. So things, I think we got acquired twice. Things start to slow down, so I'm actually doing art for myself again and pick up the Pride of Life. And I actually just recently picked it up again after almost a year, just due to personal things going on in my life. So, but I just started posting content this past month in April, I believe. So I'm feeling pretty ambitious about it. I started a Patreon campaign for it. That's doing well. I will be looking into probably at first digital publishing, so possibly pay what you want PDFs of the redrawn books that I will be focusing on at some point when I have time. But what I'm really starting to focus on now is building readership and getting building a community and getting them involved. So I'm trying through Patreon and through Tumblr to really be inclusive about the Pride of Life and get people interested at this point. Like with my Patreon, I'm actually getting ready to do a art raffle next month to have a character to have a patron's character, their original character, either make them a super beast or have them fit in some context within the world of the Pride of Life. So I think that one will be pretty fun.
That sounds awesome, actually.
Yeah. Well, there are things in the works that just finding the time to really get things kicked off the way I want to.
Good stuff. Yeah, it shows that you're thinking ahead of for yourself, for your comic, and making it still interesting to the readers that you have and that you're still building up. So that's awesome.
Well, I try. It's been going pretty well because it's been going on so long. So I've actually had readers who were teenagers having read this, and they may still be following or coming back to it. It's like, oh hey, I remember this guy. And I think even though Kanemoto himself is really garishly colored, it also makes him instantly recognizable.
The blinding purple. Oh my God, my eyes.
Well, not quite that garish, but.
Sorry, fuchsia. My mistake. Sorry, I'm just learning color theory. So that was good. What are you most passionate about then?
I'll split it between character design and storytelling. 'Cause storytelling is something that was actually instilled in me by my parents. Both of them have actually read to me, in actual different character voices when I was little. Like my dad especially would do. I had a number of Sesame Street books, I think.
Ah, yes.
There was one particular one where it was with Grover, and it was called The Monster at the End of This Book.
No, I know that one.
And he would do the Grover voice.
No way.
Yeah, it was excellent. Remember, we sometimes talk about it now, and he'll mention that, oh, it always hurt my voice to do the Grover, but you always wanted the Grover voice. It was a really great boy.
It was, yeah. My mom used to read that to me all the time too. That's great. Oh.
So even just characterization at that level, I think, it helped me to feel passionate about characters, it might have been something inherent in me anyway, because I vividly remember playing this game as a kid. It was called Bugs Bunny's Birthday Blowout, and the premise of this game is you're playing as Bugs Bunny and you're trying to get to your 50th anniversary party, but the other Looney Tunes characters are trying to stop you. And when I got to the end of the game, I'm Bugs Bunny, I got to my party, here's my cake, but here's the whole cast, and they're just kind of waiting there as if, surprise, and I was really upset because they had done all this crap to impede me, and they didn't even apologize for it. And I'm like, I'm 5 years old, and I'm already thinking about this stuff. I'm being legitimately upset about this. Oh, God.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
See, I think Bugs just would have tossed the carrots of dynamite at them, and that would have been a better ending.
That would have been a better ending, but no. Here's me being 5, being upset because they didn't apologize to this fictional character for being mean, essentially.
Oh, jeez, that's great. When do you feel you're actually most creative?
Well, I tend to get little inspiration bursts for about 2 weeks at a time. And I'm not really sure what triggers it. I just feel, for whatever reason, something triggers it, and I feel super motivated, and I'll just focus on nothing but this for about a 2-week period until I burn out, or I just plain get tired and have to force myself to slow down. But I think it's just feeling really good about what I'm doing and feeling confident in whatever I'm trying to do. And I think that really fuels my passion to create.
Good stuff. What do you fear the most?
What do I fear the most?
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think I fear anything as far as that. I mean, it's just fun to me. It's just a fun space that I can enter and create. And if it doesn't work out, oh well, I can draw something else. It's not really that big of a deal. It's because I'm not setting out to create masterpieces, and I don't think that's a good way to approach art. It's draw and have fun, and if I'm not having fun, then I'm doing something wrong.
Hmm. Have you ever not had fun with art?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I actually, let's see, I was on a game team for a while when I was in social media, but after the game I was working on, I think they're actually sunsetting that game because it wasn't doing well. It was a Facebook browser game,
Hmm.
and with microtransactions and all that good stuff, and that actually wasn't performing well, so that they ended up stopping new content on that game, and I actually got moved to marketing, so which was basically just web ads. It was it was not fun. It was uh, that was I hesitate to even call it art because I created very little new art for it. It was really just recycling assets I had already created or other teams had already created and sticking typography on it. And while I do like typography, it's not the same as drawing something.
Uh, Photoshop skills at work.
Mm.
If you weren't an artist, if you weren't actually doing what you're passionate about now, what do you think you would be doing?
Probably marketing or human resources stuff. I actually thought I would be, if I hadn't been encouraged to do art, or rather, if I didn't think that was just the way to go, because people would always ask me, "Are you going to be an artist?" Because they saw I like to draw a lot as a kid. It's like, well, okay, I guess I'll go with this. I probably would have gone into some kind of economic field or some kind of uh, advertising firm because I actually did a few economics competitions when I was a kid. It was called the what was it called? It was called the Me competition. I forget what the M stand for, but the E was for economics, and we had little exercises that we had to do where we had to make commercials using items of whatever they gave us. Like I think the first year I went, we were given a straw, some string, and tape, I believe. And my team actually made a hamster swing out of it. And so or I drew the big banner with a hamster on the swing on it, and we choreographed a commercial with a jingle and everything.
Wow.
And we actually placed first that year. It was really very cute. I think it was a team of four. It was me, two other girls, I think a guy, and I was, the customer complaining about my hamsters being bored, and then I think the other kid comes in introducing the hamster swing, and we ended it with a little choreographed number with the girls like singing "Buy the New Hamster Swing" and doing the whole Vanna White, letter gesture, and we did a pretty good job, if I must say, if I do say so myself.
That's amazing.
So, yes, I think that would have been probably the field, if not art.
Good stuff. Geez, now I'm gonna have that hamster swing in my mind. You should draw that one of your characters on the hamster swing.
Maybe I will.
How did I get here? You've been doing this for 10 years, which is an amazing feat in itself, off and on for 10 years, but still, it's a decade of your life that you've invested in a great project, a great batch of characters, and everything along that line. So in that regard, you're successful. You're a very successful person in the various companies you've worked for as well. But do you consider yourself personally successful?
I think I'm doing pretty well. I haven't hit all the goals I want to hit yet, and I do hope to have them in the future. So it's basically American dream goals for the most part. Get the house, have the family. So
Dog, 2.5 kids.
I can deal with the dog, I think. We'll see about the kids later, maybe. But let's get the house and the dog first, and then we'll decide. But I'm definitely doing a lot better. I think I might actually be the first in my family to have gone to college. So I mean, this is me coming from a lower working class family up to I'm pretty comfortably middle class at this point in my life. I like it here, though. It's I've done what I wanted to do, which is go into art. I've never had any reservations regarding that, and I've just been the kind of person that just does what I want, or my parents have been, very supportive of me. They've just been they just let me go do my own thing as long as it wasn't something dumb or harmful. They've pretty much just been encouraging. So.
I'm curious about that. Not the dumb and harmful stuff that
Right.
you didn't that you didn't do. More along the lines of, I'm glad to see your parents were supportive. Were they supportive all throughout? Like when you decided you were getting into art, did they? Obviously, they supported you then, but as you were growing up, did they ever try to persuade you to do anything else, or was that something that you were kind of set on your goals in mind?
Well, I was pretty settled that my mom actually tried to suggest that I go into nursing since it's a pretty stable field. She actually works at a state medical facility.
Okay.
And I almost did that while I was on my job search. I was actually pretty close to doing a payroll position at the office she worked in, but due to politics over there, that didn't come to pass, which was fine anyway because I ended up getting a managerial position in retail, which I only took so I could secure a loan to go to school. Which was basically my game plan. It's like, okay, I actually had to take a year off because my co-signer backed out the year I was going to transfer. So I figured, well, okay, Sears is hiring. I'll work my way up to management and then get the loan and then bail in 6 months. And that's pretty much how it went. So,
that's
good. So don't work for Sears because it's pretty awful. It's awful across the board. Nobody's happy. You'll be unhappy. But but it's good if you want to go into management to secure a loan. So
it's all about priorities, isn't it?
It is.
Is there anything that I haven't brought up that you would like for those that are watching this or listening to this on iTunes to know about the comic, about yourself, about things that might be up and coming with Pride of Life, and maybe projects that might pique their interest as well?
Well, if you don't mind me plugging my Patreon.
No, go ahead.
Well, well, as far as those things, any kind of things like donations, I do try to at least have some kind of reward for people that like the comic enough to support. Like those, knowing, well, you're already familiar with Patreon. It can be a recurring thing, or they can pledge per amount of content. I have a monthly setup on my Patreon since I do update regularly. I update every Wednesday a new page.
Nice.
And that has a variety of tiered awards. Like for instance, if you pledge $5 a month, you get early access to new pages. So instead of having to wait till Wednesday, you could actually get it on late Sunday, early Monday to read the new page. Next tier up, we do group Q&A sessions or one-on-one Q&A sessions, depending on what the person is comfortable with. All patrons get access to any new art I create, any works in progress on pages, character designs, etc. Up to free posters and free art, basically, for the highest tiers. And for people who don't like recurring transactions, they can actually just kind of tip me on PayPal, and that is actually set up so when a certain dollar amount is hit, there will be an extra update per month. So instead of just a 1 page a week, you'll actually have 2 pages for that week when that dollar amount is hit. So everybody gets something at some point to support if they choose to support the comic.
Good stuff. Well, it's great to see that you're focused on that, and hopefully we get to see a Kickstarter campaign in the future for maybe a Pride of Life omnibus or volume 1, 2, 3, something like that.
Well, it's definitely something I'm kicking around, but I've got to redraw those first few books first. Lots of work, but it'll be worth it in the end, I believe.
I think so, especially for a final product like that. Rhandi, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's been a pleasure, and I've had a fun time talking with you. I've learned a lot about yourself and the comic as well, too. I'm sure those that are watching and listening to this do as well. And, of course, so what's the website we can go to actually see Pride of Life? And I don't know if you're on Twitter or any other social media as well.
Okay, well, there's actually a few places you can go. I actually have a primer on my YouTube channel for all the places you can hit up for Pride of Life content, and that's just youtube.com/Pride of Life channel, I believe. But the main site itself is just prideoflife.com, and there's links to all the different things right on the front page. So there's plenty of content for the readers, not just the main story. We also have, apart from the main story, there's also Ask the Cast comics where people can write in fan letters and the characters will answer them. I post, aside from the early access stuff on Patreon, I also post art and answer questions on Tumblr, which is just the prideoflife.tumblr.com. There's the YouTube channel I just mentioned. And I believe I also have an alternate account where I post the Pride of Life because I believe that the Pride of Life is hosted on Host Monster, and I've actually had issues with people in other countries being blocked from accessing this site. But I actually do have an alternate account on Weasel that can be accessed on. But it's basically all there. There's plenty of places to hit up the Pride of Life. So.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, by the way, last question: how's Tumblr actually helped Pride of Life?
Well, it definitely gets the word around. Definitely, since I do at least try to post as much new content as possible. Things get reblogged. People see the art. It's like, oh, I wonder what this is. Click and come to the Pride of Life Tumblr, which links back to the main site, of course. So I've tried to ensure that it's always very easy to access the main content so people can know what it's all about. And it's not just that. I also am on DeviantArt and Weasel, so people who are following the Pride of Life have likely been also following my non-Pride of Life art for several years. So it's always very easy to access my work in some way.
Good stuff. All right. Well, I'll just want to thank you again for coming on the show. It's been a true pleasure having you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And that ends this episode of Two Geeks Talking, episode 371, with, of course, Rhandi Fisher from Pride of Life, prideoflife.com. And tune in next interview for another great interview with another great comic person for the continuing 42 interviews in 42 days challenge. And I think this was number 15 or 16, I forget. We'll see.
Yeah, third of the way there. Almost.
Woohoo! Yay! 25 more. Oh God, 25 more people to go. No.
You can do it.
Oh gosh. But thanks again, everyone, for listening and watching. Of course, you can go to our website tgtmedia.com or twogeekstalking.com. The word two, not the number two. You can go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TGT Media. And of course, our Patreon account is patreon.com/2geekstalking. Support us for $1 a month if you wish, or more. There are other great, amazing prizes, including the famed webcomics What's Cooking Cookbook, Feeding Families City by City, with over 60 creators and 120 pages of custom comics and amazing recipes as well. But thanks everyone for listening and watching. Tune in to our next episode with another great creative person.